So this time I'll be continuing the discussion about Scholomance Academy, the new cards. We've talked about the top 10 overrated cards last time. This time it will be about the top 10 underrated ones. So I'm really excited to talk about like underrated cards because when you claim a card is overrated and then you're wrong, you just look really stupid. But if you say like a card is underrated and it ends up not seeing play, then you're just like too bad. You know, you don't really seem too dumb or anything. But if you're proven right, then you look like a genius. So yeah, that's great. So let's jump right into it. Number 10. Number 10 features two cards. They're very different, but they kind of follow the same theme. So the first one in number 10 is Troublemaker. I think Troublemaker fits very well in Big Warrior. Big Warrior that plays the 7 mana Recruit, the new spell. Also, it's pretty solid in Control Warrior, Control Bomb Warrior, or even maybe Tempo Warrior in my opinion. It's a bit worse than the Demon Hunter 6/7 pre-nerf, but it's in Warrior. I feel like this is a very good finisher for Warrior. Um, then we have the second one at 10th place, which is Tidal Wave. I think Tidal Wave is very much undervalued. Um, Overall, I think health swings are just underrated. For example, people didn't really think that the 8 mana 4/8 Wind Fury Rush Lifesteal for Shaman was any good, but it ends up being quite good in Control Shaman, and I think this card as well. Even though three damage to everything isn't that much, the health swing itself kind of compensates for it. It also has good synergy with the Shaman Weapon and the Shaman Innervate, so you can like I don't know, Weapon on 4, maybe Coin Innervate into this AOE on 5 and get a nade drop from the weapon, which is really good. Overall, I just really hope that we can see the resurgence of a big deck, because I was a fan of Easy Bait, Easy Druid, the Bog Champ slash Quachi Shaman, if anyone remembers. That was like the big shaman. There was the Fibonacci's Big Warrior, Big Spell Mage, Control Mage, right? Maybe except Big Priest that I hated, but overall I'm a fan of big decks, and right now we are not seeing any of them in standard, so I would love to have some of them back. Okay, so number 9. Number 9 is actually a 1-drop, so it is Animated Broomstick. So this card, this is one of the more underrated 1-drops in my opinion. It fits really well in a survival druid because you buff everything and you want to immediately swing the board, and this one is perfect. It comes onto the board as a 5/5 with rush for 1 mana, and it gives everything else rush. So like if you just had a huge Mount Seller turn, but that the opponent's gonna kill you, you can just like coin this thing out and you rush all your 3-drop beasts into their board so you don't get killed. Something like that. I think it's a great card in Survival Druid. Also, I think it's a pretty solid card overall in tempo-based decks because just giving your minion rush really helps you like pick up favorable trades on the board. So yeah, that's my number 9 underrated card. Talking about like Animated Broomstick, and my next one, I want to talk about like my 5th pitfall of card evaluation. The last 4 were discussed in the previous video, but this 5th one is undervaluing flexibility. The best example is Branching Paths, of course. So when people said Branching Paths is just a bad arcane intellect, it's just a bad savage world, right? Everything seems bad about it, but just the flexibility of that card, the fact that you can choose twice between 3 options, makes the card like pretty much auto include in Druid. I think even nowadays, yeah. So number 8 is Sneaky Delinquent. That's my number 8. So this card doesn't look that strong on paper. It's just a 2 mana 3/1, but I think the fact that it gives you another 2 mana 3/1, this one really has like kind of like the Firefly effect, in my opinion. It makes your curve so much smoother in like an aggro tempo based deck. It kind of reminds me of why even Paladin and even Shaman were good, because their hero power that costed 1 allowed them to always have like that perfect curve. They never had to float mana. And I think this card is super flexible. You know, when you're going to float 2 mana, you just play that out, and it just sneaks into the curve, no pun intended. But yeah, it just fits the curve very well. So I think this card is pretty underrated. I don't see many people talk about this card. I see many people giving this card insta 1 star. But yeah, I don't think Aggro Rogue wants to play the 2 mana 1/3 stealth. I think Aggro Rogue wants to play this one for sure, even though it has some anti-synergy with Voracious Reader. So, number 7. Number 7 is a neutral card, but to be honest, it's really just a Demon Hunter card. So I think Mana Feeder Panthera is really good. You can't really say that it's just like a 3 mana. Well, yeah, you could argue that it's a 3 mana 2/3, draw 1, deal 1 damage. And even if you just say it's just that, I think it's still really good. Yeah, it accomplishes a lot in Demon Hunter. I'm talking specifically about Demon Hunter. I think this card is really good in Demon Hunter. You know, sometimes you can play this on 2. You don't always have to draw. It's a 2 mana 2/3, but other times you use that to cycle. And yeah, I really like this card. Demon Hunter almost always wants to press their hero power. So before we jump into number 6, I'd like to talk about my last and 6th pitfall of card evaluation, which is evaluate cards based on only existing decks in the current meta. That happened for, you know, Reno decks, right? Like Reno decks didn't exist back then, and people couldn't see the potential of Reno at all. So that's why my number 6 is Vectus. I think, like, even though we don't have that many good death rattles in the game currently, I think the potential around Vectus is really, really insane. And I'm not sure about that, but I think this card could make Death Rattle Rogue just viable again by itself. Also with the 4 mana kind of like Echo card that Rogue has, I think Death Rattle Rogue could be something, and the potential around this card is insane. And I personally do really miss Death Rattle decks like Cube Hunter, Cube Block, so I'm a little bit biased. I really want this card to be played. Number 5. Number 5 is a Druid Hunter dual class card. It's called Adorable Infestation. You know, most people gave this a 1 to 5 star. I think Aggro Druid is going to be a thing in the next meta, even though it hasn't been a thing since like April 2019 or so, since a year. I think Gibberling alongside Adorable Infestation alongside Voracious Reader will make Aggro Druid a very good deck, actually. It's not because there's a better druid deck that aggro druid suddenly becomes unplayable, right? You have different matchups, and both decks serve different purposes. And remember, Jeeves was best fit in druid. So, druid is really good at dumping cards and refilling their hand and dumping again and refilling and dumping again. So this card perfectly fits that purpose. Just Gibberling coin this on one is like insane. It's just insane. You have like 3/1/1s and one 2/2 already, just by playing those 2 cards. Well, 3 cards technically with a coin on one. So this card is really good, I think, and aggro druid is going to be really good in my opinion. Number 4, we have Raise Dead. So most people gave this like maximum 3 stars, but I think even though it doesn't fit in any current priest or warlock deck, I think self-damage zoo will be a thing with the 1 mana tour guide that can perfectly curve into the 3 mana 3/4 that refreshes mana when you're taking damage on your turn, with the 3 mana 4/5, with the 4 mana 3/5, and with Flesh Giant. I think this card is the perfect fit in that deck. So many synergies, helps you curve out the giant early, and it's just a 0 mana draw 2. You don't really care about the 3 damage, so this card is insane. And Zoo will be a thing because of this card. Number 3. So number 3 is Diligent Note Taker. So I think you probably have like observed the trend, which is I think aggro is going to rise up with this expansion. I've just talked about aggro druid. I've just talked about zoo, and now I'm going to talk about Totem Shaman. So I think Totem Shaman is going to be pretty good in the next meta, at least tier 2. And this card is actually a perfect fit in Totem Shaman. Totem Shaman wants to play so many 10 mana 0 mana spells, like 4 totem buffs, and probably the new Innervate as well, that makes 6 0 mana spells. And the fact that this just like copies the spell and returns it to your hand makes it so like it's really good on tempo and on value. So yeah, I think this card is going to be really good. Number two is once again a druid card, but this time it's more like a combo druid enabler for druid. It's First Warden Omu. So I think some like people aren't really seeing the potential of this card. I know some people did give it like 4 star out of 5, but I've talked with Paveling Book about this card, and we are pretty convinced that it might even be a better finisher for druid than the beast package, depending on the matchups, especially against control decks. The fact that you can Omu into Germination, into Malygos, into Moonfire, into having 10 mana to spend with that Malygos is insane, right? You can easily OTK your opponent. And the fact that like this card has such great synergy with Germination is what makes this card an underrated card in my opinion. I really think this will enable Malygos to be like really good again in Druid. And Druid is already very powerful. It's just a question of how you want to finish the game. And if you play Mali and Druid, you can play Swipe as well, and Swipe is a really good card. Now, number 1. This number 1 is actually Hunter Race's favorite card. And no, it is not Ace Hunter. This card is Star Student Felina. Yes. So when this card got revealed, Tic Tac said on Twitter that this is like the worst card seen so far. And I know like No Hands Gamer and Language Hacker, they all gave this card a 1. But first of all, I think Control DH will be at least tier 2. And Control DH is not a fatigue deck. It's a control deck, but that wants to kill your opponent. And usually your opponent always will be holding, one or two key cards that, are really important so that they can eventually survive or win the game. The fact that you can play this is really going to hurt your opponent and help you win the game, in my opinion. And I think this card is really underrated. People don't really think it's that great, but I think it's just like an auto include in Control DH. Slower Demon Hunters, basically. And it's going to be a great win condition for Demon Hunter, I think. It's way better than Glide, in my opinion, but even though both cards, they don't really fit into the same archetype. So yeah, those are my top 10 underrated cards. And don't forget about the 2 pitfalls that we've been discussing. So the first one is undervaluing flexibility, and the second one is evaluating cards only based on the current meta. So next time, we will be discussing about my best 10 cards of the set, as well as 5 hot takes for the next meta. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.